Today, we're jumping into one of the most incredible final acts in the entire Bible, the death and burial of the patriarch Jacob. Now, on the surface, it might seem like a pretty straightforward story, but trust me, when you dig in, it is absolutely packed with meaning about faith, about legacy, and about the destiny of a nation.
So let's get right to the heart of the mystery. You've got Jacob, he's dying in Egypt, which is, the superpower of the ancient world. His family's there, he's safe, and yet, his last unbreakable demand is to be taken on this long, difficult 400-mile journey back to a cave. So you have to ask, why? What on earth could be so important about that specific spot? To really get it, you got to picture the scene. Jacob's at the end of a really long and, let's be honest, pretty chaotic life. He's not out in the middle of nowhere. He's a guest of Pharaoh himself, and his son Joseph is basically running the country. He could have had any honor, any grand tomb Egypt had to offer.
So as he feels his life coming to an end, he calls all 12 of his sons together. These are the guys who will become the heads of the 12 tribes of Israel. And this isn't some quiet, gentle farewell. This is a moment with real weight. He gives them one last command, a command that's going to shape who they are for generations. And then he peacefully passes away.
So what was this all-important command? Let's look at his exact words, because they are the first major clue to figuring this whole thing out.
Just listen to the language here. It's so formal, almost legal. It's a binding charge. Bury me with my fathers. He's not just asking to be buried in a certain place. He's demanding to be reconnected with his family, with his history, with his people.
And that specific place is the Cave of Machpelah. Now, this wasn't just some random piece of real estate. This was the one and only piece of the Promised Land that his grandfather Abraham had ever actually bought and owned. It was their family's only real physical foothold in the land God had promised them.
And get this, look who was already there. It was like the family's Hall of Fame. You have Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and even Leah, Jacob's first wife. So to be buried in this cave meant everything. It was about being physically and spiritually brought back into the family line.
So, of course, Jacob's sons agree to do it. But what happens next is just mind-blowing. This is not a small private family funeral. This turns into a massive state-level event, which only makes you wonder even more about how important this guy really was.
First off, the entire nation of Egypt goes into mourning. For 70 days. 70! That was an honor usually saved for a pharaoh, which just goes to show you the kind of respect Jacob had earned, all because of his son Joseph.
And then there was the procession itself. It was huge. It wasn't just his family. Pharaoh sent his personal staff, the highest officials in Egypt, and a military escort with chariots and horsemen. The Bible calls it a very great company. I mean, can you even imagine what that must have looked like?
Which, of course, brings us right back to our big question, but now it's got another layer. It's not just, why did Jacob want this? It's also, why in the world would Pharaoh agree to it? Why would the most powerful ruler on earth send this massive official delegation to bury a foreigner in what was essentially a rival territory?
Okay, so it's time to put the pieces together. The answer is that this whole thing, the command, the journey, the procession, it was all about something so much bigger than just finding a final resting place. This was a powerful statement.
And here's the heart of it. For Jacob, Egypt, even with all its wealth and safety, was still exile. It was temporary, a waiting room. But Canaan, that was the land of promise. That was their true forever home. His burial was him physically choosing a future promise over his present comfort.
So here's the bottom line. Jacob's final command was this incredible act of faith. He was basically teaching his children and showing the entire nation of Egypt that his real identity, his ultimate hope, wasn't tied to the empire they were living in. It was tied to the promise God had made to his family generations ago.
So let's just break that down a little. His request showed this unshakable belief in God's promises about the land. It showed his hope in a God who's with his people even after death. He was purposefully passing that faith down like a torch to his sons. And that giant Egyptian procession, that was the proof. It made his faith a public witness to the world about the power of his God.
So in the end, that 400-mile journey to a cave did so much more than just fulfill a last wish. It was the perfect summary of Jacob's entire life, and it sealed his legacy for all time.
This was the final chapter of an amazing transformation. Jacob's early life was all about scheming and struggling. His name literally means supplanter. But through his journey with God, he was changed into Israel. And his death wasn't an act of weakness at all. It was the final, powerful move of a patriarch who was all in on God's promises.
And this is so critical. Jacob's burial wasn't about looking backwards. It was a lesson for the future. He was physically pointing his descendants toward their destiny, basically telling them, hey, don't get too comfortable here in Egypt. This is not our real home. Our future is over there, in the land God promised us.
It's been said that the end of a believer's journey isn't despair, but hope. A hope that's anchored in God's unchanging promises. And that's exactly what Jacob's final act was. It wasn't really an ending, it was a profound statement of hope. A hope that's even bigger than death itself.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty big thought to chew on. Jacob used his very last breath to make a statement of faith that would echo for centuries. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do our own final acts, the legacies we leave, the things we point to at the end, how do they end up defining the whole story of our lives?